She had everything: beauty that stopped traffic, an Oscar on her shelf, a prince who made her a real-life princess, 3 beautiful children, a palace overlooking the Mediterranean. And yet, on a quiet Monday morning in September 1982, Princess Grace of Monaco got behind the wheel of her car and drove straight into eternity. Her daughter Stephanie was in the passenger seat. She watched her mother's hands grip the wheel. She heard her mother say the words that still haunt her to this day. "I can't stop. The brakes don't work. I can't stop." This is the story of Grace Kelly, the woman who escaped Hollywood to find her fairy tale, only to discover that fairy tales don't always have happy endings. But before we get to that tragic day, let me tell you about the girl who was never good enough for her own father. November 12, 1929, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Grace Patricia Kelly was born into one of the most prominent Irish Catholic families on the East Coast. Her father, Jack Kelly, was a self-made millionaire, a champion rower who won 3 Olympic gold medals, a man who built an empire laying bricks. But here's the thing about Jack Kelly. He was tough, old school, and he had very specific ideas about what his children should become. His sons? Athletes, winners, champions like him. His daughters? Well, they should marry well and stay quiet. Grace was the third of 4 children. Skinny, shy, suffered from chronic sinus problems that made her voice sound weak. She wasn't athletic like her siblings. She wasn't loud. She wasn't what Jack Kelly wanted. But Grace had a secret dream. She wanted to act. Her Uncle George was a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. Her Uncle Walter was a vaudeville star. The arts ran in her blood, just not in the blood her father valued. When Grace told her father she wanted to be an actress, do you know what he said? He said acting was a slim cut above streetwalker. But Grace Kelly didn't listen. At 18 years old, she packed her bags and moved to New York City. She enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She worked as a model to pay her bills. She appeared in television commercials. And slowly, very slowly, she began to prove her father wrong. What happened next would make Grace Kelly the most famous actress in the world. But it would also set her on a path toward the greatest heartbreak of her life. In 1951, Grace made her film debut, a small role, forgettable. But then came High Noon, opposite Gary Cooper. Suddenly, people noticed this blonde with the cool demeanor and the hidden fire in her eyes. And then, Alfred Hitchcock noticed her. The master of suspense saw something in Grace Kelly that other directors missed. He called it sexual elegance, the way she could look perfectly composed on the surface, while something dangerous simmered underneath. Hitchcock cast her in 3 films: Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief. She became his ultimate blonde, the archetype, the woman every leading man wanted and every woman wanted to be. In 1954, Grace won the Academy Award for Best Actress for The Country Girl. She beat Judy Garland. She was 24 years old. At that moment, Grace Kelly stood at the very top of Hollywood, the most sought-after actress in the world. Studios were offering her millions. And her father? Jack Kelly finally started paying attention to his daughter. But Grace Kelly had a secret. She hated Hollywood. She once said, "Hollywood amuses me. Holier than thou for the public and unholier than the devil in reality." She was tired. Tired of the games. Tired of the gossip. Tired of being a commodity. She wanted out. She just needed a reason to leave. And then, She met a prince, a real prince, and everything changed. May 1955, the Cannes Film Festival. Grace Kelly was there promoting To Catch a Thief. A magazine arranged a photo opportunity with Prince Rainier III of Monaco. The tiny principality on the French Riviera needed publicity. And what better publicity than a Hollywood star? Grace almost didn't go. She was running late. Her hair wasn't done. But she went anyway. And something happened. Rainier was 31, handsome, charming, lonely. He ruled a country the size of Central Park, with a population smaller than most American towns. He needed a wife. He needed an heir. He needed someone who could put Monaco on the map. Grace was 25, beautiful, accomplished, and desperately searching for something real. They exchanged letters, then visits. Then, after a courtship of less than a year, Rainier proposed, January 5th, 1956. The engagement was announced. The world went insane. April 18th, 1956. The wedding of the century. 30 million people watched on television. Grace wore a gown designed by MGM's Helen Rose. It took 36 seamstresses 6 weeks to create. The lace was over 100 years old. Grace Kelly, the girl from Philadelphia, became Her Serene Highness Princess Grace of Monaco. She was 26 years old. She had made 11 films in 5 years. She had won an Oscar. And now she was walking away from it all. Her Hollywood career was over. Her fairy tale had just begun. But here's what the fairy tales don't tell you. The palace walls were closing in, and Princess Grace was suffocating. The first years were difficult. Grace didn't speak French. Monaco's aristocracy looked down on her. They whispered that she was just an actress, just an American, not royal blood. And Rainier? He loved her. But he was also possessive, jealous. He didn't want his wife to act anymore. When Hitchcock offered Grace the lead role in Marnie in 1962, she was desperate to accept. The people of Monaco revolted. They didn't want their princess playing a kleptomaniac on screen. Grace was forced to decline. She never made another film. She threw herself into motherhood. 3 children. Caroline in 1957, Albert in 1958, Stephanie in 1965. But those who knew her said Princess Grace was lonely, isolated, trapped in a gilded cage with no way out. She took up flower arranging, poetry readings, charity work, anything to fill the void. Her daughter Caroline later said, "She wasn't in great form. She was incredibly tired. She'd done too much. She never complained, but she wasn't happy." James Stewart, her co-star from Rear Window, stayed in touch until the end. He said Grace brought a soft, warm light into every room. But inside the palace, that light was fading. And then came September 13th, 1982, the day the fairy tale ended forever. It was a Monday morning. Grace and her youngest daughter Stephanie were at Rock Aigle, the family's country estate in the mountains above Monaco. 17-year-old Stephanie was supposed to catch a train to Paris. She was starting school there. The back seat was packed with her luggage and dresses. Grace's chauffeur offered to drive, but there wasn't room for 3 people with all the luggage. Grace said she would drive herself. She rarely drove. She hated driving. But that morning, she got behind the wheel of her 11-year-old Green Rover P6. The road from Rock Aigle to Monaco is treacherous. Hairpin turns, steep cliffs. No guardrails in some places. At some point during the drive, Grace complained of a headache. Then, according to Stephanie, her mother seemed to black out for a moment. Princess Caroline later recounted what Stephanie told her. "Mommy kept saying, 'I can't stop. The brakes don't work. I can't stop.' Stephanie grabbed the handbrake. She pulled as hard as she could, but the car wouldn't stop. The car missed a hairpin turn. It crashed through a barrier, and it tumbled 120 feet down the mountainside. Stephanie survived with minor injuries. A hairline fracture in her neck, bruises. She would recover. But Grace was unconscious from the moment the car came to rest. Doctors determined she had suffered not one, but two brain hemorrhages. The first one likely caused the accident. The second one, caused by the impact, sealed her fate. The palace released statements saying Princess Grace was stable, that she had broken bones but would recover. It was a lie. Grace never regained consciousness. September 14, 1982. The next evening, surrounded by her husband and her two oldest children, Grace was removed from life support. Her Serene Highness Princess Grace of Monaco was dead. She was 52 years old. 100 million people watched her funeral on television. Princess Diana was there. Nancy Reagan. Cary Grant, who had been her co-star and close friend. At the private memorial in Beverly Hills, James Stewart gave the eulogy. His voice broke as he spoke. "I just love Grace Kelly. Not because she was a princess, not because she was an actress, not because she was my friend, but because she was just about the nicest lady I ever met." Grace Kelly had everything the world says we should want: beauty, fame, fortune, a prince, a palace, a crown. But the truth is, Grace Kelly spent most of her adult life searching for something she never quite found: freedom, fulfillment, a place where she truly belonged. She was married in the Monaco Cathedral. She was buried in the same cathedral. 26 years. That's how long her fairy tale lasted. In her last interview, just 2 months before she died, Grace was asked how she wanted to be remembered. She said, "I would like to be remembered as a decent human being and a caring one." She was both, and so much more. Rest in peace, Princess Grace. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who remembers when Grace Kelly